Nikki Hembo, and here to answer today's question, which is a basketball question, is our NBA insider extraordinaire, Brian Windhorst. Windy, right now, if the world were in a normal place, we would have narrowed down the NCAA tournament to the Final Four teams. So the question is, which men's program has the record for most Final Four appearances?
Well, look, it's not UCLA because Hembo is sneaky. And it's not Duke because before Krzyzewski, they weren't anything. So in my mind, I'm showing you my work here. It's North Carolina or Kentucky. I think Kentucky, Adolph Rupp, his history. I know they were around and doing stuff in the 50s, 60s. So I'm going Kentucky.
Oh, it was North Carolina. You were that close. You narrowed it down, by the way, to the right four teams. North Carolina is the answer with 20 appearances.
Oh, really?
UCLA 18, Kentucky 17, and Duke 16. So you had the right four schools, didn't get the right one. As Hembo would say, that doesn't count.
Partial
okay,
credit.
Next up, it is day 19 of the NBA hiatus as the U.S. continues, of course, to battle the COVID-19 pandemic. And the NBA is continuing their efforts on restarting the league, and owner Mark Cuban of the Mavericks said last week he was hopeful to get the league back by mid-May. And so this is why we wanted Windy with us here today, because I don't feel like anyone has had better perspective on this thing from even before it began than you have, Windy. And so what is the latest you are hearing about how and when the league can resume play?
Yeah, they're having conversations at the ownership level about what to do here, but they have no timeline, of course. The reality is, and I know that I started talking about this over the weekend, and I got a lot of pushback, Greeny, but I have to talk about reality. The reality is that not only when it comes back is there not going to be any fans, but there's a decent chance that they're going to have to look at centralizing teams. It is what the Chinese are doing with their league, and they're facing a 4-month delay to get it done. Over the weekend, the Premier League, there were reports out of England that the Premier League, you know, the leading league in the world for soccer, is thinking about doing the exact same things in the Midlands in England, basically out in the rural areas. And I think this is what the NBA is going to have to seriously look at is centralized locations. LeBron shot down the concept of this idea last week. Other players that I have talked to don't like it, but it is what the reality is. The hard thing, the number one thing, is to get the players protected and to keep them healthy. And you can't travel to do it, and you've got to create like a tunnel for them to stay in. And that's why I think it's going to have to be, maybe not at one place, but it may be a couple centralized locations.
Let's be real specific about what we're talking about. And every time I've had you on, I've made this same remark. We can't tell you what's going to happen in the future. We can, however, tell you what's happened in the past. And you are telling us this is what they had to do in China with basketball. This is what they're doing in England with the Premier League, a soccer league that is every bit as big and significant as the NBA is here. That they are basically clustering all of the teams in a small place. Everyone is coming to the same one small place, and they will play it out there. That's what we're talking about here.
Well, in China, it's 2 different cities, 10 teams in each city, but it's comparable because China's a huge country. They have 20 teams. In England, they're talking about it. But yes, and by the way, to get this done, to have temperature checks on the players every single day, to put them basically in a hotel where there's, and the important thing here, Greeny, there's no players association in China. That would have to be negotiated with the NBA. The Chinese can just implement it and say, you want to be in the league? Report to this location and we're going to put you in a hotel. It would be more complicated for the NBA. But even the Chinese haven't been able to get it done yet. And they keep delaying it and delaying it. But this is the route they're going. And it's going to take the Chinese 3.5 months. And maybe the U.S., if we do okay as a country and get healthier, maybe we can cut it down a little bit. But I still think it's going to be months and months, and it's going to be centralized when it comes back. The Chinese are hoping that they can play the rest of their regular season and then bring fans back in, that by June in China it will be in a position that they can do that. Hopefully that's something the NBA could do. But in the initial phases of this, centralized locations in a bubble is what all the top leagues are looking at. The NBA is on that list.
You mentioned that the players don't like this idea, and it's easy to understand why they wouldn't like it, to be taken away from their families and everyone they care about during this extraordinary time. It's easy to see why someone would be opposed to that. However, if indeed it comes down to this is the only option to play any semblance of a season here, provide that entertainment for people, and preserve whatever percentage of the money would still be available, I know I'm asking you to guess. Is your sense that the players ultimately would do it?
Well, this is where LeBron's voice matters so much, because LeBron has said he doesn't want to play in front, not outside the presence of fans, and he doesn't want to go to a sequestered situation. Does LeBron want to play to try to win a title this year? That's the bottom line. And yes, it's about money, but it's also about those teams at the top trying to play for that title. And there's going to have to be some negotiation, Greeny, here between the owners and the players. Now, the MLB just got this done. They have not started in the NBA yet, but there's going to be a fight over money very soon, and these topics are going to come to the forefront, and I expect it to get dicey.
All right, that's really well done. Brian Windhorst, thank you very much, and we'll continue to lean on you for all of this insight as we continue. Again, if it's 3.5 months, you're talking about July, if you go back to when the NBA shut down. As we continue here on Get Up, Tom Brady has won 6 Super Bowls, all of them with Bill Belichick. So who needs to win more now that they're apart? I'll tell you why the answer is obvious. Divorce sounds a little bit harsh. It is probably the most asked question in the NFL over the last 2 decades. Is it Brady or is it Bill? Who is most responsible for the unprecedented run of success the Patriots have enjoyed over 20 years? Maybe this year we will finally find out. Meanwhile, it seems worth reminding you that while there is no way to evaluate Brady without Bill, because it has never happened, there is plenty of data to evaluate Bill without Brady. And for whatever it's worth, it's not a pretty picture. Bill Belichick coached exactly 100 games before Tom Brady's first start. He was 42-58. Most of that was in Cleveland, where he took over a Browns team that had made the playoffs 5 out of 6 years. He coached them 5 seasons. He had losing records in 4. By the way, Nick Saban was his defensive coordinator 4 of those 5 seasons. And yes, the ending was a terrible situation. The team planning to relocate to Baltimore. Factor that in however you like. Then he went to New England. Belichick was 5-13 with Drew Bledsoe, #1 overall draft pick, at quarterback. Then Brady took over. In his first start, he beat Peyton Manning and the Colts by 31 points as a double-digit underdog. He then went 13-3 the rest of the way and won the Super Bowl. Brady went on to average 28 points a game as a starter over his Patriots career. That is the most by any quarterback ever. In games started by anyone else, Belichick's teams have averaged 19 points. Brady also won 6 playoff games in which his team allowed 28 or more points. No other quarterback has ever won more than 2. And Brady made himself a salary cap bargain. In none of his championship seasons was Brady a top 10 cap hit in the league. So what does all of this mean? Certainly doesn't necessarily take anything away from Belichick as a coach. I believe he is the greatest in the history of American team sports. But the facts are the facts. So if he is ever going to accomplish anything without Tom Brady, he's going to have to start doing it now. That's what I say and what the numbers say. Let's see what my guys say. Marcus Swagoo Spears, I give you the first crack at this. What do you think?
First of all, the damn down barrels are the greatest thing on this show, man. That's number one. The second thing is this, man. Greeny, you can't point out a great coach or a coach that we think is the GOAT per se without one of the players being the GOAT. Look at all of the relationships over the history of sports. Phil Jackson, Michael Jordan, Phil Jackson, Kobe Bryant. We look in college. We look at John Wooden with Lou Alcindor, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, known as. We look at all of these greats, Steve Walsh, Joe Montana. It is a correlation. You have to have the guys that can execute whatever plan you're giving them and even sometimes overcome when the plan is not all that great. Like to your point, it does not take away from Bill Belichick being arguably the greatest coach of all time. But find me a marriage in the history of team sports where we've mentioned the coach being the greatest of all time without a player on that team being the greatest of all time or top 1 or 2 in whatever job they're doing, and you can prove me wrong. But until I don't see it, I've never seen it, not to take anything away from any coach that's ever done great things.
Go ahead, Dan.
Tom Brady is one of those guys where you will be mentioned as greatest of all time.
Yeah, Marcus, you're wrong. Greeny, during the commercial break, you had said this down barrel is fire. And out of respect, I was like, man, Greeny, you've had some good down barrels, and that was the best one ever. I mean, 2 things stood out to me. I did not know that the 5 years previous to Bill Belichick becoming the head coach of the Browns, they went to the playoffs 4 out of 5 seasons.
5 out of 6.
That was surprising to me.
5 out of 6 seasons.
5 out of 6, I'm sorry. And then the second thing was the fact that Brady has averaged more points as a starting quarterback than anyone else, and he had 6 wins when his defense gave up 28 points in the playoffs or more. Like, those are some startling numbers to me that really encapsulate an argument. And really, I mean, I'm trying to be dead serious here. Like, I kind of leaned towards Brady for a while now, but hearing the reality of these numbers, and you can't run from some of these things, it only pounds home, pounds the point to me that this is a Brady-driven thing, and that was the best down barrel that you've ever done. And I think it's going to make a lot of people really angry in New England. Marcus, you're wrong.
Go ahead, Marcus.
How do you get them dead wrong? I just sat here and gave you a soliloquy about if you're going to be mentioned as the greatest coach of all time. 9 times out of 10, you had the best player either of that era or of all time.
Here's the thing, though. In no other sport, and maybe this is because we correctly believe that the coach is more important in football than it is in any other sport. But in no other sport do we say, was it Michael or was it Phil? Was it Kobe or was it Phil? Was it Duncan or was it Pop? Was it Auerbach or was it Bill Russell? We always say, of course, it was the player. The coach, there's no doubt, Phil Jackson was a major contributor to the Bulls winning all those championships. But Michael Jordan was the reason that they won them. Only in football do we wonder this aloud. And I just thought it was worth spelling out all of the ways in which Brady changed everything.
It's always the player. I'm with Dan. It's always my point in saying, if you are mentioned as the greatest coach of all time, by and large, you have the greatest player of all time, or one of the most generational game-changing players in the history of the game. There's someone, I'm gonna leave it alone after this. Somebody has to execute. Somebody has to go out there on their field to play and execute at a high level if you're going to be mentioned as the greatest coach of all time.
We will bring this back.
Marcus, the point of the down barrel. The point of the down barrel is to prove that since there was that execution, maybe that coach is viewed differently than he would have been without it. Like, that's the point of the down barrel, dude, is to realize the player executed
it.
I
have to leave it here. We will come back to this. I don't understand exactly how it is we are all agreeing, and yet we're arguing with each other. We'll come back and we'll discuss this a little further, a little later. We'll bring it up with Stephen A.